Hello, everybody. Good to be with you again. Today, I want to talk to you about something that came up several times in sessions last week. It came up again in the Satsang Sunday, and then it came up yet again this morning. Although I brought it up, but it came up again this morning because it was an appropriate time and place for this student of mine and I to talk about it. And when I say it, what I'm talking about is that when we first awaken, there is when we, like in the throes of initial awakening, there is the view, there's the very true view, very distinct view that there's no one home, that the lights are on in these units, but there's nobody at home, that there's no Fred, right? That there's just no character actually here, that the character is a fiction. And that's part of awakening. It's a big part of awakening. But that's not all there is to awakening, okay? So when I have an awakening session, the first 2/3 of it are typically devoted to seeing what we are not. But the last third, the critical, well, it's all critical, but the last third is devoted to discovering what you are. If you want to know what happens in an awakening session, go by Awakening Now. Awaken Now. But the last third is always about discovering what we are. This is so critical because in the absence of discovering what we are, which is everything. See, at first we discover in an initial awakening, first thing that we discover is, oh, I am no thing. We can't say nothing because there's something here, but we can say it's not a noun, it's not a thing. So I go with no thing. So I see that I am no thing. So I've exchanged Fredness, my identity as Fredness, for my identity as no thing. But no thing ain't got no identity. It's no thing. So, I mean, it's impossible to live a negative. When I was in recovery, what I discovered was that people that came to my 12-step meetings who were interested in not drinking generally didn't make it. If that's all they were interested in, was not drinking. Because you can't live a negative for very long. So what are you doing here? Well, I'm not drinking. So how's your life going? Well, I'm not drinking. Whereas the people who, generally speaking, had a much better chance were the people who were genuinely interested in transformation. I was very lucky in that I had nothing to lose. I had nothing to offer and nothing to lose. But that's not the case now. So no matter where you are, I promise you that there can be that you can have a glorious future. And I say that as a guy who only started having a glorious present in the 50s. And I say a glorious future, I mean a glorious present that'll be experienced just a little later. Shoot it. So when we see that we are nothing, but we have not, and we've exchanged it, we've exchanged the fact that I am Fredness to I am no thing. That's sometimes what we call the desert of awakening, which is where we've gotten rid of our identity, but we don't know what's going on, right? I know who I'm not, but I don't know that even if I am really. I can say sort of if I am, but I am no thing. What happens is that there's a further opening where we can actually come to see what we are, which is everything. So now what we're doing is we're exchanging Fredness for everything. So now when Fredness is seen to be a fiction, we could say that we're trading nothing for everything. And it just, it makes, I'm not saying no thing, because that's part of us, but nothing. Because Fred is a fiction. The character, your character, is a fiction. The one who you, if you are not at this moment consciously awake, then the one that you think you are is actually awakeness. That very voice in your head that you think is you is not you. It is awakeness. You're just not recognizing it as awakeness. So, but when we see that we are everything, then what happens is we come out of that desert of awakening. Because the desert of awakening is seeing that I am no thing, and it is, and there's nothing for me to do, and there's no one here, and there's no point to any of this. There is no, I have no enthusiasm for any of this. I'm not just detached. I'm just disinterested, right? And I am, because there's a difference between detached and disinterested. You can be quite interested and still be detached, because that's the experience here. And it's the experience in some other folks that I know too. Quite a few. So, but what we want is to see that we are this everything, because once I have stopped being the no thing and I am being the everything, then that juice comes back in, and suddenly I've got meaning and purpose in my life again. I've got motivation again, because I know there's no one here. Listen, nobody on the planet knows this, I don't think knows this any better than I do. I guess there surely must be, but I can't miss what I don't have. I can't know about what I don't have. So far as I can tell, I know very, very clearly that there's no one here. That there is no Fredness here, but there is the experience of Fred. Anyway, do you see this? There's the experience of Fred. Whose experience is it? It's the experience of oneness. It's not Fred experiencing Fred. There's no Fred. In the absence of Fred right now, what's left? Oneness. So it is the experience of oneness. It is oneness that's having the experience of Fred. It's having the oneness right now has a sense of individuality. It thinks this body, or it doesn't think, but it feels like that this body is a separate being. And I mean, all that's hogwash, but it doesn't mean the cool part is that because there's a feeling that this body has free will. I mean, it feels to me like I'm picking this up, showing it to you, right? I, Fred Davis, have decided to pick this up and show it to you, Bob Smith. So that's hooey. It's not a matter, is there free will or not free will? There's no one here to have free will. There's no one here to not have free will from the absolute. But from the relative, here I am. Yeah? If there's no one here and nothing to do, then why is this video being cut? I would view this as pointless. I would view this entire teaching as pointless. I probably find some takers on that. Not a lot of people who'd agree with me. But fortunately, there's a whole hell of a lot of you that don't agree with that. This teaching has been very useful in your life. But if I had just stayed down in my living room, just, I'm oneness and that's that, or I'm noneness and that's that, and I just, oh man, I mean, it just, who cares about any of this? This teaching would have never started. And my teacher's teachings would have never started. And then I would be hung with the guy that I used to be. And man, I don't want to be that guy, because even when I've been sober several years, because I've been sober for like 4 years for 6 years before I woke up. And so that having been, but I was still crazy, right? I don't want to not only be the guy that I used to be when I was drunk, I don't want to be the guy that I was when I was sober in pre-awakening. This guy is just so much more fun. Now, this is oneness speaking to you, and there is no individual here. But it looks like there's an individual to you, and it feels like there's an individual to me. How do I know? I just adjusted the camera and the lighting and all that to get ready for this. And I'm doing it to a unit. It's an empty unit, but it doesn't feel like an empty unit. There's a sense of Fredness here. And in awakening sessions, I have people track that down, and they come to see that indeed that there is a sense of a personality there. There's a sense of individuality there. There's a sense of a Fred or a Susan or a Tom or whatever it is. That it's just a sense. But, how do you say it's just a sense? That's like saying that life is just an illusion. If this is an illusion, go for it. Because it's a whale of an illusion. It's an incredible illusion. It's a magic trick. I get it. Right? What really, does any of this really exist? And perhaps not on the most, on the most critical level, on the widest open level. But this experience that I, oneness, am having as Fredness, the human being, is not an error. It's not a mistake. It's not something that I have done, because I, oneness, am pretty well powerless over this thing. I'm the witness of all of this that's just happening. It's not other than me, but it does not equal me. It is not other than me, but it does not equal me. So, this experience of manifestation, because that's what's happening, is that you always are, I always am, we were the same thing. So you always are. Sometimes you know yourself and sometimes you don't. When you know yourself, you can say, I am. When you don't know yourself, you can't say, I am. It doesn't mean you're not there. It doesn't mean you're dead. It just means that you're not having the experience of being. Notice that I always say the sense of being. You don't have that sense of being. You don't know yourself. Well, if you're listening to this, you do know yourself. It depends, just a matter of how deeply. But you at least know yourself to be manifestation. And it is, which is not untrue, as long as you stick with all of manifestation. It's not 1,000% true, but it's close enough. This unit works very, very hard every day, every week. Betsy says, "My God, it's the, as she calls, it's the job that never ends." That's what she says, and she's right. It can't end. It's what I am, and I love it. But it still works very, very hard 7 days a week, except for like 3 days a month when we take a little staycation. And even then, I'll probably be coming in here and answering emails and cheating a little bit when Betsy's asleep. It's incorrigible. It's a worker bee. And let me give you an example. Last week, I had been waiting for for 10 days, and I had been waiting for the spirit, if you will, to grab me and push me down in front of this computer so that I could write a post. I knew I needed to do a new post. It's just time. It had been almost a month, and then it got to be where it had been a month, and then it got to be where it was slightly over a month since I had written a long post. Done lots of short ones, but I hadn't done a long one. And, that always brings in a lot of traffic and stuff, so it's a good idea to do. And so, plus I had something to say. I had written just a little bit of it, but I had not been able to get back to it and write the body of it and finish it. So after having waited about 10 days for the spirit to move me, I just recognized, the spirit is not going to move me. At least not at the pace that it feels like I should be moving in. We got to be very careful with those shoulds and shouldn'ts. But I'm saying that it feels like. So it's taking that's taking the hard edge off of that should, and that it feels like. So what it felt like to me was that it took sheer discipline. Just get up and do it, you lazy old man. Get up and go to the computer and write this damn post. Because if you don't, I'm going to bother you I'm going to just drive you crazy. Isn't that right? So I got up and I came in here at 9 o'clock one evening, and I sat down, and 6 hours later, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I stood up having completed that post. And then I had about 30 minutes getting ready the thing that I send out to you guys to let you know that there's a new post. So, but here's the funny thing, was that it felt to me like it was sheer discipline getting me in here. And it felt to me like it was sheer discipline starting to write that post. But by the time that post was finished, I had no idea what I'd written. None. I wasn't even clear on what the topic was. I swear to you. I couldn't remember it, and I had to go back and I could look. I could see the topic and to see if this appeared to bear any resemblance. And I finally decided, well, you wrote what you wrote, and go and it's in the middle of the night. For God's sake, hit publish. So I did. Now here's the funny thing, is that I've gotten more comments, more emails, just tons of emails, lots of emails, not tons, a good many emails, thanking me for writing that post, that people are loving that post. It's the post I'm talking about, by the way, if you haven't read it, is When Bodies Appear to Fail Us. It's apparently a very clear post. People like it a lot. I can't remember it. I didn't write it. It got written through this, but I didn't write it. But it felt to me like it took discipline to come in here and start. So what I'm saying is that it is that combination of discipline, enthusiasm, hard work, and surrender. Because midway I didn't know what I was writing either. Just so you know. I really didn't. It was like, God almighty, is this insane? And I've had this feeling before when I've done posts, where I'm just going to go ahead and publish it. And this might be the one where they come pick me up and put me in with the butterfly nets and put me in a home, because I couldn't make sense out of it. But I didn't need to, because it was making sense all by itself. It didn't need Fred's coaching and Fred's help and Fred's micromanagement. That's the one thing that would have screwed that post up. But if I had waited for that spirit to move me, I don't know. I can't have any idea what would happen. But based on what had happened prior to that, my guess is that I still wouldn't have a post up. That's the sense I have. So what I'm saying is, it's not like that what is in a light sort of way, we can say that it's a perfect world, that everything is perfect, everything's working just right. In a slightly less biased way, we can say everything is as it is. But I will tell you that I see it on a regular basis. I see it now, for that matter. But I have seen it yet more clearly that it looks to me like it's a perfect world. It just does. I don't talk about that much because I think it's gilding the lily, but that's nonetheless my overall impression, is that it's a perfect world, which means that all of this is happening just perfectly, which means that the Fred conditioning is not the place where the universe is screwing up. It's not. The Fred conditioning is also perfect for what the Fred conditioning is supposed to do at the time that the Fred conditioning is supposed to do it. And I can do all the psychological stuff I want. I can try to be as unegoic as I can. I can try to, but I've taken a lot of flack because I self-promote. I've always self-promoted this teaching, and I still do. And that's the only reason you're watching this, is because I have self-promoted it. At some point, you heard it. So it's not inherently evil. That's just an egotistical stance that we should not. I mean, I notice I do. Can someone in non-duality actually stand up and honestly tell me I should not when it's actually taking place? They're out of alignment with reality, and they've set themselves up for suffering. It does what it does. Now, this doesn't give me license to say, well, to do whatever the ego thinks, but I can tell those things. I know what the ego wants. It's always incredibly selfish, isn't it? Like I'm gonna, if there weren't laws against it, I'd just go up there and rob that bank. Well, that's not true. If I were, because I go rob that bank, I'm robbing your money, my money and yours. But I'm taking something that is not mine. That doesn't seem to me to be. I'm not drawn to that sort of behavior. So it doesn't make any difference whether I'm. So there's no point in my thinking that that's not the non-dual way to go. It's just not the way that awakeness moves. So I don't actually have to worry about. There's this sense that I've got to keep the ropes on this awakeness, because it left to its own devices, it's just going to screw up. But awakeness is fine left to its own devices, because it's always left to its own devices. It only feels like it's sometimes left to ours. But ego is not okay left to its own devices. But it is okay as seen and experienced from truth. My real, if we have a conversation about truth, about reality, at that core, it's going to be fairly short, right? So I'm not, because here it is. I'm noneness, having a dream of oneness, which is having a dream of Fredness. Close the book. There's the truth. Now, but what's interesting is that in this experience of living, in this experience of Fredness, when that truth is dropped onto its head like an atomic bomb, boom, everything begins to change. And that's what's interesting. I mean, it's the dream is the fascinating thing, and our experience as individuals, as apparent. I mean, I know they're apparent individuals, but our experience is not our apparent experience. Well, it is, but it doesn't feel like it. God, it's hard to talk about this, isn't it? So this is where I can get, but I get so enthusiastic about this teaching that I can hardly talk sometimes. I get so enthusiastic about this teaching that I can hardly sleep sometimes. And you wouldn't think that it's possible to be detached and have those experiences, but it is. Because if this teaching goes to hell tomorrow, it's been a lovely ride. If I die tomorrow, it's been a lovely ride. I mean, I'm gonna find a way to agree with what is, to align myself with what is. But part of what is here is that there is a sense of an achiever here. I'm not Bill Gates, whatever. It's not that kind of level thing, but it has cut out its own little space for me, and it feels like I did it. And that's enjoyable. Even the Bhagavad Gita talks about just leave the results for God, but give it your best. And and a lot of times we are pulled into isolation, and we're pulled into demotivation and everything with this. But what I'm telling you is that some of that is we just give ourselves permission to do that because we're the non-dual cool. What I'm suggesting is use some discipline, get that momentum going, and then watch. In AA, they used to tell me to, if you find yourself out in the middle of the ocean, in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean, then pray to God for deliverance and row like hell. So that's what I'm telling you to do. It's the combination of relativity and universality that makes for this thing, that makes for this joyful living. Okay? It's not surrendering to relativity, which was the way I always did. It's not surrendering to the universal, which is I'm just the vastness. I tried that, and I just got miserable years ago, and I just, I saw that I can't do anything to help me clear up. But that was a decision I made. And so I unconsciously was making a decision. My practice became sitting in my chair in the living room. And because I don't have a practice, but I did. My practice was sitting in my chair in the living room. And I started reading stuff other than non-duality. I couldn't enjoy it, but I was making myself try. And ended up getting very, very depressed. And so Adyashanti's book, The End of Your World, was very helpful there. If you have not read it, I certainly do recommend it. Changed my life. A number of things did, and that was a big one. So this sense that you have free will, that's not a mistake. The sense of individuality, it is the essence of a human being. It is the essence of one of these units, is that sense of individuality, and it's not in error. It's if I say that I am, when we talk about identification and misidentification with the unit, with the body mind, then we are apt to say that, well, you are mistaken. This is a mistake. You are identified with this body, a single body, instead of all of this. Well, I'm not saying it's correct, but it's not a mistake. I have yet to find a mistake. And that's the truth. Yet to find a mistake anywhere. Even the worst stuff of my life, I can see that it was not a mistake. It's not what I'd pick for you. But it worked here. And is that what it took? It's what it took. So there's no other way that I could have gotten here, because there's no alternative to what is. We're going to talk about this more, because I'm really getting interested. What I'm talking about is getting interested in the experience of living the dream from the view of truth. But not just going out here, well, I've got it. This is great now, because sit underneath the cherry tree the rest of my life. There are people that are drawn to do that, and that's wonderful. I just noticed this isn't one of them. And I don't have a single client that is either. I have some clients that sort of wannabes, go sit under the tree and do nothing, but their units won't let them, because they're not supposed to. And that's not a mistake. That's what that unit's supposed to be doing until it isn't. Let it do it. Align yourself with what's happening, but align yourself from the eyes of truth, not from the eyes of the character. When I look from the eyes of the character, I find the same mess I had 10 years ago. And nothing's changed. God almighty, what a bunch of problems I have. Let me tell you about it. Complaints, no end of complaints. I can view this exact same scene from the eyes of truth, and it's just wonderful. It's perfect. It's marvelous. It's fascinating. It's interesting. I don't really even know how to get bored. I mean, I'm not saying that units should never be bored or anything like that. I know that there's a lot of discussion about that too. I'm just telling you that I swear to you, I can look at this ceiling up here. So it's kind of one of the little popcorn ceilings. And I can look at that ceiling and I can just get lost in it. Now, it doesn't mean I don't ever want to do anything else, but I'm saying if all I got to do is look at that ceiling, I'm going to make that. Then it is interesting in its own way. Everything is when I realize I'm everything. So I see I'm up on my preacher's pulpit. My God, let me get out of here before I run all of you off. I bet. So I enjoyed this. It was good to be with you, and I'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Bye bye.